Okay, the topic of conversation today is anterior and posterior pelvic tilt. These are terminologies that have kind of spread like wildfire, and a lot of people have heard of anterior pelvic tilt and posterior pelvic tilting. A lot of people have been heard about this stuff because they've been told, don't have that posterior pelvic tilt, or you have an anterior pelvic tilt, you have a posterior pelvic tilt. You kind of get diagnosed with these certain postural deformations, so to speak. And so when you get slapped with this diagnosis, you have anterior pelvic tilt, you need to fix that. Then what happens is that someone will tell you you need to fix it by either, usually it's tucking your tailbone underneath to remove this anterior tilting, this excessive tilting that's happening, or some other type of correction. This to me is really destructive on our kinesthetic awareness of our physical body, where we are in time and space, and is not a helpful strategy in helping us be sovereign movers and own our standing posture, how we choose to show up in the world as. The reason I say this is because anterior and posterior pelvic tilts are all based upon visual fields and geometry. We look at somebody's shape of their spine, of their back, and we say this is too much curve, we need to have less curve. Or this is too rounded and we need to have less rounding. There's going to find a perfect neutrality, a neutral spine that has been told to us that you need to live in. Now, when we say that you need a neutral spine, or you need to, let's say you have anterior pelvic tilt, we need to tuck underneath to remove that, what it's doing is forcing your awareness of your physical body and your structure and your posture to find a singular home base where you want to stay, remain, live, and not move from. You want to hold on to this certain type of posture. And posture is just a way for us to understand how do we hold ourselves upright. But there is no static posture like we see in the anatomy books where somebody is just standing there. In fact, if you were at a party and somebody was just standing in perfect posture, like, hello, how are you? It would be extremely awkward. Posture, even our standing posture, is something that is extremely dynamic. And when we try to make a dynamic situation something that is rigid, like we do in the anatomy books, that creates a lot of excess tension. It creates a lot of, let's say, mental confusion because we're trying to hold on to something that isn't something that should be held on to in the first place. And so all of this is rooted because we're trying to fix a visual, or we're trying to change visually, geometrically how somebody is looking. And we say, we don't like that. We don't like that your head is forward, so I want you to pull your head back. Or we don't like your hips being like this. We want you to have your hips something like this. For movement and for our understanding of our body, we see things as humans, but then we feel them. And that's really important. So if you're somebody who's been struggling with anterior, posterior pelvic tilt, and what do I do with my backside? What do I do with my spine? How do I hold my posture? Is this correct? Is this not correct? You are stuck in the visual field, trying to make your body look in a way that is correct, that is right. The science that your coaches, that your trainers, that your parents might say, that is good posture, good job, you are doing it. If you are making your physical posture, which is a movement, based upon external cues that is right or wrong, then we are removing our own ability to stand in our own power. We're actually doing that. So in order to stand in our own power, we have to feel what it feels like to stand good. So for instance, instead of basing our posture or our understanding of anterior, posterior pelvic tilting on something like the shape, let's go by feel. And let's feel the different muscles, tendons, joints, bones that stack us to have a really nice standing posture. So the first one that we can do is, are the muscles in the front side of my body active or are they relaxed? And the first one I want you to do is to pinch with your hands. Just pinch the sides of your hips. Pinch into those hip flexors. And notice when we push our hips forward, what happens? And when we push our hips back, what happens? So this forward and backward is going to increase the tone of the front of our hips or decrease it. And I want you to find your happy medium. Where do my hips sit where I want the tone of the front of my hips to be? Remember, those are your hip flexors. So those are the things that do this job. Do I want the muscles that do this to be my standing muscles? Or do I want something else? Feel the back side of your body, your low back, your spinal erectors, your glutes and your hamstrings. If you're standing, we should be able to find and feel our glutes. If we can't feel our glutes, that's a problem. Now, if you can't feel your glutes, but you are feeling like your low back, this is when we say, okay, I'm going to put my hands on the side of my hips or feel my tailbone, and then I'm going to just make some slight adjustments. Maybe that is pulling the tailbone down, and I notice what happens. Oh, I feel a little bit more in my glutes and my hamstrings. I feel a little bit more rooted. That feels good. So we're making little organizational changes, front, back, up, down, left, right, and then we're feeling, how does that make my body feel? Does my body feel more connected? Does it feel more rooted? Does it feel more based out? Do I feel taller in my spine? Do I feel more decompressed? It's easier for me to breathe. These are things that directly connect us back to our felt sense of in the moment right now. How am I standing? I'm not walking around and like tucking my tailbone like, oh, my doctor told me that I have this thing, so I have to hold this position and walk around with my tailbone tucked the entire time, because that's not necessarily a reality of what's happening with our movement. Our movement is always dynamic, and if you watch somebody walk or even run, there is this ability of tucking and extending that allows us to move forward. So we need both, but the question is, where do I include this little tuck, and when do I include this little extension? Well, at the end of the day, you are the only person that can make that judgment call. And it's not necessarily you, it's actually your body. And your body will tell you, this is a good place for me to be in, this is a good amount of tension, or this isn't a good place. Those are those red flags, those not a good place, I'm getting a little bit of pain, a little irritation, too much work in my low back, too much work in my hip flexors. Where can I facilitate this pressure and this activation, this tensegrity model, so that I feel relaxed, at peace, calm, able to breathe? This is the direction that we need to and we should be encouraged to go down when we're talking about posture. Who are you? How are you standing up in the world? How do you show up? Instead of saying, your shoulders are here, your neck is here, your hips are here. You need to make this. We need to pull the shoulders back. We need to tuck it down. We need to pull the chin back. And then you're walking around and you're acting like a robot. You're acting like a statue. Because when we base posture off of a static model like we see in the anatomy books, when we base our posture off of shapes and positions only, we are taking our individual power and we're putting it to the outside world, to somebody else's eyes, either the mirror, a textbook, a coach, a doctor, and that is really disempowering. You want to stand how you need to stand, and so that takes a direct relationship between you, your body, and your kinesthetic awareness, your ability to feel. And for some of us, that's really difficult. We've never been taught how to feel, or you weren't born with that gift. You can develop it, you can learn it, and that's when inviting a coach in who can help you. But it's really important for that coach to help you feel more with your body and to make better decisions, not a coach who's there to tell you, move your hips like this, pull your shoulder this way, and only make these postural changes based only on visual. We have to connect to the sense of the feeling of our body, and what does it mean to actually stand how I want to stand in my power. And when you're doing that, nobody gets to tell you if it's right or wrong, because you feel it, that this is how I want to stand and this is how I want to show up in the world.